Okay, next up we have Guishard, who's going to come up and talk to us about microaggressions. Clap it up for Guishard.
All right. Thanks so much, Morgan. It's going to be hard to top that, Monica. But I think what I'm talking about is such a great build and connection to Monica's words. And I'm happy to be with you all here today to present Reframe to Reclaim. So, uh, my name is Guishard Reven. I am a DEI professional, 8 years of experience in HR, DEI realm, pronouns he, him. And I, similar to Monica, I have these lists of accolades, but on the surface, they seem like LinkedIn. You see it and you're like, oh, wow, NYU graduate, two-time graduate, writer, published poet. I'm really excited about those things. And, I think even when I think back about my graduation, I wanted to Dougie across the stage. I may be dating myself. I don't think the Dougies a dance people do anymore, but this was me. This was me when I was graduating. But at the same time, I had these deeper thoughts. And, I think about Michelle Obama's quote, and I think about how she said, the world won't always see you in these caps and gowns. They won't know how hard you worked and how much you sacrificed to make it to this day. Instead, they'll make those assumptions. And here I am talking about microaggressions with you today. And a part of why microaggressions exist is because of assumptions someone might make about who you are, where you come from. They run the gamut. And I think, you know, even when I think about graduation, and I think about the speaker that we had there, who was the chaplain of the Islamic Center for NYU, he spoke about a lot of microaggressions he experienced as someone practicing his faith, as someone who worked very closely with 9/11 victims, and sort of think about those microaggressions, even reaching that stature in his career, makes me think a lot about where did it start for me when I think about the microaggressions that I experienced. It goes all the way back to NYU, my first year there, undergraduate student, just excited to be in that environment. And I think back to like a very particular scenario where I'm sitting there with a classmate. We're talking about, oh, where did our friends from high school end up going? Where do we all end up? And very matter of factly, this person mentioned in the conversation that, yeah, one of my friends went to Harvard. We're really excited for her, but at the same time, we know she only got into it because she was Black. And I was just so taken aback. I never really heard anyone say something like this at the time. I really didn't even know how to respond. And it really made me think about this image here, at least how I interpret it, as someone like almost choking on their words, almost like can't see where those thoughts might have sprung from. And it was just really difficult. And even though that wasn't about me, it made me sort of internalize what someone may have thought about me. Like, did other people think I belonged at NYU? Like, it's a predominantly white institution, and there's not a lot of people who are of color that go there. So it was difficult, and it started to shape even at that early stage how I thought about my experiences, how I moved in those classrooms, things of that nature. So I think what this prompted me to do is learn more about what was I experiencing? What are microaggressions? I didn't even know the term at the time. This is a very scholarly definition, but just to ground on what a microaggression is for those who don't know, it's those everyday slights and dignities, put downs that you might experience. And some can be subtle, some can be overt. And I won't necessarily go through this whole list. I speak a lot about this in some of my writings and things of that nature, but they can be invalidations, they can be assaults, and sometimes it's not even words. Sometimes it's just behaviors and how someone treats you. So all of those, you may think at a surface level, oh, I'll just brush that off, but they can build up over time, and they actually do have research. And this research is continuing to build where they actually have an impact on you physically, from headaches, high blood pressure to difficulty sleeping, how it impacts your mood. All of these are things that as you continue to experience those everyday slights, they actually add up. One, you may say, oh, I can brush that off, but multiple over the course of your career, over the course of your higher education, whatever it may be, those all play a role and they impact you. And I think what it's really important, especially for this audience, whether you're someone who is just entering the workforce, whether you're someone entering a new company or thinking about what to consider, I think this people are really uh, anxious when it comes to microaggressions, and more people were able to speak out when we shifted sort of that uh, from the remote role for a lot of people to going back into the office. People realize actually when I was in that physical space, there were a lot of things I experienced that I didn't have to the same way when I was working virtual. Maybe I didn't have those same like coffee chats, water cooler talks, or whatever it is. So it's a real topic, and it's something that we all have to keep in mind. So this really brings me to how I was entering the workforce and what I had to do. So right here, when thinking about when I graduated, like I said, I was happy, but there were a lot of emotions that were taking place at the same time when I first graduated. From my first experience outside of higher ed was actually working a front desk job at a hotel. I had that expensive undergrad degree, and I needed to find ways to pay that off. I didn't have health insurance of my own, and really, it was a multitude of things I was experiencing, from feeling like a failure, feeling like disappointed my parents, to did I live up to my potential? But I put all that weight on my shoulder so early on, and really to get to where I am today, that brings me back to reframing to reclaiming. I had to think, okay, what can I do right now? What small steps can I take to actually get to where I want to be, rather than thinking all at once, like, okay, my life is over. Like I didn't do what I should have done to get to where I want to be. But like taking a step back, my journey just started. So even that was a quick reframe I had to do to actually get to where I'm at now, where I'm comfortable in my salary. I'm in a role that I really aligns to what I want to do. For hopefully the next few years. And I think it starts with those small steps, and I'll take you through a couple of those. But before I do that, I'm wondering who has heard or experienced some of these microaggressions that are on the screen now. Some of these may not be new to you, and I can see a few people already saying like these are things that maybe they heard said to someone else, but the fact that other people have had this experience means that they probably have impacted you in similar ways of how they impacted me. Again, everyone experiences something differently, but whether you know it or not, you may have internalized it in some way. So this is my first step of how I reframe to really reclaim when I think about a self affirmation. This is something I tell myself, but everyone, I encourage you to come up with your own affirmation, your own mantra, stick it on a board, stick it on your wall, put it on your phone, wherever you want to put it to reground you when you experience something that tries to tell you you're the less than, tell you that you don't belong in these spaces, whatever it is. You uh, have the power to actually take it on and say, actually, you know what? I know what I am. Don't worry about what other people are saying. And again, I work in the DEI space because I do understand there's still systemic changes. There's still policies and things that need to take place that, people need to do to actually improve systems. But right here, I'm here to tell you about what you yourself can do in your power. So I think for me, this is a powerful one that I try to remind myself to say every day. My race does not define my diction or eloquence. I'm a wealth of knowledge, continuously pouring into myself, and I'm worthy of my voice. And this really stems from, you know, oh, you're so articulate for such and such or that. Like getting that a lot throughout my higher ed and my career. I have to reground, and that's something for me. So whatever it is for you, you'll have to go through that process of thinking about what will reground you. Um, so transitioning into that, what are the 8 steps? Of course, this is not an all how-to guide. It's of each step will have more details behind it. but this is a good starting place to have you start to think about, get into the process of how do I train my mind to consider what on my journey I need to do to reframe experiences, because we all have our own story, our own personal experiences that we went through. So I want to take you through some of the steps that have helped me. Hopefully, they're helpful for you as well. I think the first step I always think of, and these are in no particular order, is make the space to process and validate your emotions. I think that's always going to be the important keys. I go back to, you may experience these microaggressions and brush them to the side, but are you actually thinking about what happened? I can think back to times where I was called the name of the other Black person in the office when there's only one other Black person, and initially I'm like, all right, that's not a big deal. Like, I'll leave that alone. But actually, when you dig deeper, okay, what happened? Why didn't I call that out? Why did no one else call that out? What do I do with this new emotion that gave me? And how might I respond differently next time this happens? All that will be a part of processing it and determining what really is your strategy when some of these things happen. And sometimes it's just feeling what you felt in that moment. I'm angry. I'm actually hurt by that. And that's part of processing as well. Next piece for me is find community and leverage it as a safe space. So I'm a little bias as someone who's in DEI right now. My main role is building out employee resource groups. They are such a pivotal part. And I speak a lot. I can't give all the how to's in this talk today, but how to even find companies with authentic employee resource groups that actually want to push forward agendas, want to create safe spaces. I think that's a big piece. But first and foremost, just looking, is there a community that exists at your company that you can leverage where people look like you, people will validate rather than invalidate, something you might experience in a meeting or what have you. These communities don't necessarily have to be inside internally at your company, but I think it's always a great place to start, because then you can start to talk about policy shifts. You can start to talk about who can be a mentor internally for you. I think all those are good pieces to think about. So next on the list is explore opportunities to amplify your voice and your experiences. So I think big for this is tying that to employee resource groups. For those who don't know what employee resource groups are, they're typically focused on uh, particular underserved community or identity where you have these opportunities to either um, help plan events, help think about what are our goals for DEI for the industry or company. All those are some of the things that ERGs might do. But I think when you think about how you can actually get your experiences out there, employee resource groups are a great place to start, because now, you may, if you're comfortable, speak about a microaggression or something that happened in your team or the workplace. And if other people didn't know that this is something they should consider or recognize, it may help to start to organically, you know, improve the culture or have people think about inclusivity in a different way. So that's really just a jumping off point. There are many ways to amplify voices, but I think the more you can get in touch with people who are having those same experiences, you build community, you start to cascade and amplify those messages, and you start to rally behind sort of what do we need to do to improve the culture. So it's almost reframing, thinking, okay, I'm stuck, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do with what I just experienced, but like, how can, with knowing what I know right now, leverage who's around me, leverage who else might have resources depending on their seniority, depending on things like that, and then going from there. Next is harness the power of self affirmations and affirm others to foster inclusion. So I spoke a little bit already about self affirming and thinking of your own mantra and, what is important for you to reground yourself in. But I think even exemplifying this and organically doing it can help shift those cultures too. Whether it's maybe there's someone on your team who did a great job on a project, but they didn't get the visibility they should have, calling them out in a team meeting and saying, you know what, so and so did so well. I just want to do a quick shout out for how much went into that. And these are small ways off the top of my head, but they make a big impact. A lot of things, especially when you think about the corporate world, it's going to be about visibility, who knows what you're doing, and I think organically, changing the wheels of other people and say, actually, I didn't know that so and so did that much work. Let me think about them next time when thinking about who to give praise, or when performance review time comes up. So that's one way to start to exemplify those changes, not only for yourself, but how am I getting other people, maybe from my community, who may not get as much shout outs involved. Track and measure your success. This is not only important just overall in terms of your career, but I think this is also a way of reframing when something happens to you. Okay, how am I going to tell myself, actually, I know what I can do? I actually have this list of everything I've done from since I started here. It'll be so easy for me to say, no, I should be confident. I've done this, this, and this. I've tracked these changes that I was able to make, and the impact is there. So if someone says something, not only is that important for when you think about your performance and when it comes time for review season, but also just your everyday life, reminding yourself what are you actually capable of, what you've accomplished, and then you can set your goals from there to continue to build and grow and develop. Identify leaders that are willing to sponsor your success. So I think we speak a lot about mentorship in general, but sponsorship sometimes has that added benefit. You may find sponsors in your employee resource groups. You might find them just through organic mentorship opportunities, but sponsorship really has that benefit of making sure you're brought to the next level of your career, typically by senior executives or senior leaders who already have the ears of people around them. So you want to make sure that you're getting the visibility that others might get. And I think that's a great way to think about, how do I take what I have in my wheelhouse and make sure other people know about it. Understand the resources at your disposal. So this was a really big one for me in terms of when I thought about uh, the times where I was stuck, truthfully, and what I needed to do to get unstuck. Sometimes even being able to uh, look at your workplace and say, okay, these are the things that I know that they offer, from whether it's therapy or whether it's some type of therapy benefits that are already part of the benefits package, or even a bias hotline. You want to make sure you are thinking about this proactively, because it may be difficult. Let's say you experienced something that was a big act of exclusion. At that time, it may be more difficult to think through that logically if you're already in the moment of experiencing it. So make sure you try to gather those resources proactively when possible, and determine for you, it's a decision for yourself. Do I need therapy? Do I need additional help for some of the things I experienced to be able to help process? Some people are able to process on their own and figure out what they need to get to the next level, and reframe what they've experienced, but some people may need that additional help. Last is, find your outlet that allows you to disconnect, decompress. And for me, that's writing. For me, that's poetry and basketball. Everyone's going to have an outlet that looks different for them. And I think part of this is also when we work at these companies, or we work in a society where you feel like you always have to be where you always have to be, executing on something. I think it's just as important to find time to rest. And, a rested mind is one that's going to have the most insight. And I think that's something important to remember as well. So when you're thinking through all these things, I think make sure you don't forget the important step of, don't be overwhelmed, don't overthink, and just take some time. You're going to need to process, you're going to need to think through what framework works for you. You're going to need to think about, what affirmations do I want to give myself? Because that's a form of self-love. And I think all of that will, really impact where you can go. And it'll most likely not only impact, where you go in your career, but also how you carry yourself in certain rooms or in certain environments. And then that will help your mental health and mental wellness. So these are my steps. Hopefully they are beneficial to you. And just leave you off with a quote here. You are worthy beyond measure. You're shattering glass ceilings and opening doors you were never given keys to. Thank you for your time. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to hear more about affirmations, some of the ones I speak about, and I appreciate you spending this time with us.